I'm Danny Jarabek, and I'm here with Awards Radar, and I'm very pleased to be speaking with Frank Petzold, the VFX supervisor of All Quiet on the Western Front, a film that is currently nominated for 9 Oscars, including Best Visual Effects. So, Frank, first of all, I want to say congratulations on the recognition of you and your team's incredible work on this film.
Hi, Danny, and thank you. Yeah, I'm still sort of in shock, in a good way.
Of course. I'm sure it's a huge honor. And I just want to start the conversation by just asking you what was the story behind you getting involved with this film and what was planning the visual effects of this film with Edward like some of the pre-production process, how you were going to achieve what was in this film versus in camera versus in post-production.
Well, I knew Edward from another project. We worked on together on the Terror,
Mhm.
um, and so I sort of knew how he works, and he's very he includes you in everything, which helps immensely. So I was getting together with Edward. Wrote me an email and basically just said, "Hey, let's get the band back together. I got this great book." Which is, it's a book that you really want to get right. And then it just asked Edward to just really make sure that I'm included, from the very first pre-production meeting, so that we can plan this out. And that, of course, goes into doing storyboards for the action sequences for the battles. So we right away had a very good idea of who has to do what, department-wise. How much can art department deliver? What do I have to do? What is SFX? What is VFX? How can I help makeup, and vice versa? So once we got to set, aside from the weather aspect, we had a pretty good idea of what we were going to do, and also, it was a huge set, and we had like very complicated camera moves that, sort of like oneers, almost like running with the soldiers. So that had to be planned. But like I said, the one thing that we didn't know is like how's the ground going to behave. Some just simple things like that. It's like we're going to get stuck in the mud after 3 weeks of rain. But in terms of like breaking down the shot, it was very clear how we're going to do that. There was a lot of improvisation on set in terms of getting the layers of the shot in order to do the final composite in VFX, because some stuff didn't work, like sometimes the tank got stuck. So we right away, just to be safe, we scanned everything in 3D, including the battlefield, which was huge. So we had all the models, and then in the end, on some shots we used lots of them, and some others we just really sort of just almost did the optical approach of just layering tons of elements that I was able to gather on the day. And I was there on every day on set, even though sometimes there weren't VFX shots. There's always stuff to do, and I had a green screen outdoor stage. So when they were doing dialogue without VFX, I was able to shoot stunt guys, burning, falling, explosions, tons of running soldiers on treadmills, different angles, and all that. So it's you come home with this, gigantic database of footage that you can then sort of salt to taste into the shot later on.
Yeah, that sounds like an incredible process. And something that in particular I want to talk about with you, because I know that you have come from Tippett Studio and your work in that environment. I'm curious to know if there is anything that you learned in that experience, in that environment, working under that studio that transferred to this film. It might be a different scale, different genre, different approaches, but yeah, I'm just very curious in your relationship with Tippett and how that might have impacted your career today.
Well, it's an easy answer. I learned everything. I mean, I used to be a cameraman, and I shot film and worked on optical printers, and I made the transition together with Phil in the mid '90s, sort of going from all that stuff to CG with the first SGI machines, and that was on Starship Troopers. So I was actually able to channel a lot of techniques that we used on Troopers back then, or other shows after that, because computers couldn't do everything. Now you can pretty much, if you have enough time and good software people, you can do everything in the computer. But back then you couldn't. So, which also meant a lot of time on set that you needed an extra. So, but that was sort of the approach, where it's like, what, the stuff still looks really cool after 25 years. So there's something about it. So I wanted to replicate that and discuss that with Edward and Malte, our producer. And they were up for it. It's like, yep, if you need extra days on the set, let's get it done. And so, yeah, and then I think that's something that, Phil Tippett, he would have done it the same way. And we were still good friends. So, he knows about, my pain, and we talked during the shoot. And so he's also happy to see that, it's not like we put technology in the foreground in terms of making this thing. It was really just sort of a creative process. Whatever felt natural, we used, even if it's like an old trick with a mirror, or whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. Exposure. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I also want to get some insight from you on just what it's like, the process of bringing this topic of war almost to this degree of realism in a way that's so visceral and so immersive. What is the challenges and difficulties in that process?
Well, I think that the challenges, especially for CG people, or VFX people, is that we sort of had to, I don't know, you couldn't get too excited about, doing, big stuff. That's something that you usually want to do. So, you sort of had to go, this is, we have to put all of the effort in accuracy and photorealism. And that was really just the only way of doing it, because I didn't want to sit down and do animated soldiers in the background, because you start, it becomes a sort of a science project. And so if you shoot as an element, if you shoot a soldier running on a treadmill, he's going to be great. So you can put him in there. And the same thing goes for explosions and all that. I mean, you can do them in the computer, but I wanted to have the real deal. And I think that shows. So, and that's, I hear a lot of people say that they don't know what's real and what's not. So, which is a great compliment.
Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to ask about. I wanted to ask if, just kind of as a fun question in a way, what's something that you think from this movie an audience member may be surprised is visual effects rather than real, or something they may be surprised is real and not visual effects?
Oh God, I wouldn't know. I mean, the general sort of approach that we had is that everything around the actor, like in the immediate vicinity of the actor, we tried to get in camera. But anything sort of past that, or past the running extras that we had to extend. And then even the biggest battlefield at some point ends in camera. Yeah, I mean, obviously the planes are CG, and also that we had one and a half, I'd say, working tanks, which were mock-ups that we sort of kept for the close-ups and the interaction. When they throw the grenade in there and stop it and all that stuff, you want to have something for the actors to play with. But everything else past that is smoke and mirrors. But SFX helped a lot. I mean, that was a great thing. It's even though it might not have been in the take at the same time, but I had a lot of fun with our SFX supervisor, Camille, he was like a kid. He would show me what he would bring to set every day. and it's like, oh, let's blow this up, and I'll put it somewhere.
You mentioned the tank, and that's one scene I want to refer to in particular. If you want to just shed some light on how that scene, which is so just it really just is bone chilling watching that tank scene, how that was developed and achieved.
Yeah, there was. I mean, there's two moments for me in that sequence. The first is when they appear, and they don't. The soldiers don't know what that is, because at that time it was literally the first tank, and they didn't even have a word for it. I mean, you see something and you don't even know how to express what that is. So we wanted to convey that. That was something that, and I knew coming from Tippett, where you do a lot of creature work, that's the classical way of introducing a creature. You do a low angle, you make them, you show a lot of weight, and they usually introduce themselves with the roar or with just before they just don't come out of the fog. They sort of have a presence that you want to introduce, and that was the perfect moment to do that in animation, where it comes through the fog, and you sort of can make out an outline, but you don't know what that is. And then, of course, there's there was one tank, but the others were all animated. And then there's, of course, the sequence that everybody remembers when the tanks go over Paul. There's one shot of Paul looking up when the tank just rolls over. That was the very first film footage pieces that I found from World War I. Actually, there was one shot where somebody filmed that. It was a different tank, but it had so much weight to it that I showed it to Edward, and Edward, he was he was calling me back. He's like, "Can we do this shot, please? Let's do this shot, please." And of course, there's the very graphic shot where the tank rolls over the soldiers. It was boarded a little differently, but it worked best in this angle. And that was one of those shots where, on the one hand, you're very proud of, and it came together like very as planned, and sort of textbook VFX. At the same time, it's very graphic, and it's a horrific image. So you don't want to talk about it, but at the same time you go, I like this shot for the technical aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed having this conversation about the visual effects in this incredible film. And again, congratulations on your huge honor. And I wish you the best of luck. And congratulations to your whole team as well.
Great. Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Frank.